He killed 8 people. Then, he called the police himself, not out of, but because no one came looking for him. Here's a question. If a killer ran away, what do you think he'd fear? Being chased? A gun barrel? None of the. What he fears most.
Confessed. We thought he was bullshit. Drove him all the way back. We stopped yakking.
He realizes no one in the world even cares. This is the story of Edmund Kemper. And it's also the story of how FBI agent Horton Ford first truly understood why someone would kill. Why do they say monsters aren't born that way, but are pushed out by one sentence? In the next 5 minutes, I'll give. The story begins on a hardware store shelf, Wichita. A middle-aged man wearing work clothes and glasses. He just wanted to buy a roll of electric. Calm expression. But that roll of tape was meant to bind the. This man was named Dennis Rader. Just a few kilometers away, he had just finished a murder. Monsters never look like a monster. More often, they're the faces that put you in. That's the first lesson of a Mindhunter. Meanwhile, FBI agents Holden and his partner flew to California to give lecture. In the middle of their, a local detective mentioned a name to them in a bar. Edmund Kemper. Big Ed, the code killer. 2.1 meters tall. 100. He killed 6 female college students and his own mother in Santa. At the time, he was locked up in the California state. The detectives, everyone knows him, and everybody likes him. He's smart, funny, and he's been drinking at this bar for years. He always asked about the girls who were Horton asked. The detective paused for a moment. He was the kind of guy it was really hard. A killer who spent years drinking at the police. Every time he'd bring up the murdered. Not a single cop made the. You know why? Because they liked him too much. Being liked is the most effective disguise. But Campbell's being liked wasn't really it. He genuinely wanted these cops. That's the key. Horton made a decision. He was going to see Campbell alone. No warning. His superiors. He signed a waiver saying, if you die in there, the government. And then walked into the prison. But Campbell was already sitting there waiting for him, shackled. He told his story. And that story was more chilling than any horror movie. Not because of the blood, but because it felt far. Campbell told Horton, at 8, his mother thought he was too strange. He went to live with his grandparents. But even his at 15, he shot and killed both his grandparents. He was then locked away in a psychiatric hospital. And during those years, while other kids were going through love and revolution, I was locked in. After he got out, he convinced everyone that he had fully recovered. He killed at 15, yet somehow made every expert believe this wasn't an act, it was a real desire. He truly wanted to be someone everyone would use every ounce of strength to try to force, and when that didn't work, he'd find another way to prove he. Then, there was his mother. She came home drunk, looked at him, and said, for 7 years, I haven't been with a single man. Because of you, you murderer, my son.
I got a claw hammer, and I beat her to death. Then I cut her head off.
Campbell picked up the claw hammer. Afterwards, he said, the coldest line in this, a mother should never despise her own son. This isn't a monster making excuse. This is someone who used to be a child stating a rule. He believed a rule his mother never followed her whole life. Now, after killing everyone, he drove to Pueblo, Colorado. Then, sat there, waiting for the FBI waiting for the news to report it, waiting for helicopters to search. He waited for no one came. He waited for someone to no one came. So he walked into a public phone booth, and the police thought he was crazy and didn't believe him. The officer who came to he kept talking non-stop the whole way. A few hours later, all I wanted, have you ever been through a moment like after finishing something really waiting for some kind of confirmation? For someone to notice and nothing comes. Campbell's extreme choice isn't the way for most people, but that feeling. I've given it everything I've got, so why does no one care? Does that sound we all long to be seen. Some people just look for that feeling through creation. Others use destruction. Horton and Bill are called in by their supervisor. Shepard flies into a rage. Since when has the FBI been giving therapy to killers? Horton, if we don't understand what's going on in them, how do we get ahead of them? Shepard stayed silent. Then he said, "Fine. You can move it to the basement. No more than 10 hours away, and no one can know. And just a research project that would later completely transform criminal quietly began in the basement of the FBI." In today's episode, I'll leave you with 3. First, is there a big Ed around you? Someone everyone likes. Someone who's actually been hinting all along in every way. Second, those adults who push kids away. Have they ever what they're pushing away might be a child's last chance to choose being normal? Third, is there something you believe in that has been suppressed by the system, by the environment, but you still decided to move into your own basement? In the next episode, Houghton is going to the door in American history that the FBI least wanted to open. Follow me, and see you next.